It's time for the Daily Stand Up Podcast presented by AgileDad with your host, Lee Henson. Without any further ado, let's get started. One of our subscribers recently introduced me to an article titled How Teams Handle Unplanned Work. Now, when I first looked at this at a glance, I said, oh boy. I said, this is going to be another one of those articles that tells you to allocate a percentage of your time to unplanned work. But I was pleasantly surprised when I dug in. So I'm going to just go through and review the article with you, and I'll drop a link to it here in the description of the podcast. It says, over the past few weeks, a bunch of teams have been asking me the same question. What's the best way to handle unplanned work? That seems to be an ongoing theme with many teams, right? So while plenty has been written to help how to prioritize roadmaps and other backlog related things, there's not a lot out there about how to schedule or plan for disruptions or interruptions. Okay, I don't disagree. The urgent requests from customers, unscheduled maintenance, technical questions from support, accumulating stream of bugs. Okay, I'm going to pause here for 1 second. I think that these are all symptoms. They're symptoms of a bigger problem. Now, the good news is there is a way to address this, and you have to start by understanding the different types of interruptions and how you address them. But you need to make sure that you have a good system in place for knowing how to deal with unplanned work. And that's what it boils down to. So, types of interruptions. Oh, good. They went there. So, interruptions are normal. Every single team on the planet experiences them. It's how they're handled that matters. I agree. Teams should never feel overwhelmed by them or overreact when an interruption comes in. Interruptions are annoying, but it's better to view them as opportunities because each interruption is a chance to improve a product or service in some way. I want to read that one more time. It says interruptions can be annoying, but it's better to view them as opportunities because each interruption is a chance to improve our product or service in some way. If you think about it that way, that makes it a whole lot better when you get an interruption, right? And while interruptions can never be eliminated completely, we can make them less disruptive and reduce the cost and stress associated with them. So interruptions, they give you some examples. Critical bugs, things that are addressed as part of an on-call type service, but will require pulling someone in to triage or provide support. Urgent customer request, feature requests to help close a deal, or simply need to be the scope, or simply need to scope the complexity of delivering and ask for a future delivery so that we can build things out correctly. Questions from support. New or less technical support teams are likely to need or rely on engineers for help throughout the day, which is just basic needs. Requests from other teams. As teams multiply, dependencies tend to grow with them. So you need to make sure you have an avenue for handling requests inbound from other teams. Reviewing pull requests, joining technical planning sessions, those types of things. And then, of course, you got the founder request. A lot of people refer to this as seagulling. Someone swoops in, says they need something right away, and poops all over whatever you're doing and swoops out. I love that they called it seagulling. Love it, love it, love it. And then they give you the different ways to approach how to manage this interrupt-based service. So here we go. The first one is my least favorite. It's called the suitcase metaphor. If you think about a suitcase, you're going to allocate a certain amount of your suitcase packing for different things that you may need, whether it's toiletries, swim gear, stuff like that, etc. But you're going to dedicate 80% of your suitcase to the closer outfits that you know you're going to wear, the things that you absolutely know you're going to need, your underwear, right? You're going to make sure you don't, take away space for not to put things in that you may or may not need. But you would definitely allocate small percentages of the remaining space in your bags for a buffer. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, that's perfect, a buffer for interruptions. The problem is nobody physically works that way. So if you think of when an interruption comes in, let's just say you tell your team we're going to allocate 20% of our time towards interruptions. Sounds great on the surface, but what person is going to say, okay, so out of a 10-day, 2-week sprint, I only use 9 of those days towards doing actual work because one day can be set aside for all the planning. And on any given day, I have 5.896 hours of productivity times a certain percentage of work, times a certain percentage of time that needs to be allocated towards doing interruption-based work. No one's going to sit here and start a stopwatch And the second the stopwatch goes, dee-dee-dee, they're going to stop and go work on something else immediately, drop everything, completely gain context on the other thing they should be working on and switch. Our brains don't work that way. Our bodies don't work that way. Our minds just can't process information that way. Unfortunately, we are not computers, and that's not the way that we behave or process information. So, what is more likely? Either A, we'll say that 80% of the work is more important and spend the majority of our time there and not focus on the 20%. Or B, we'll focus on the 20% and say we've got to get these interruption things done so we show something and not successfully complete the 80% that people are counting on us delivering. So the suitcase model, in my opinion, is probably the worst way to do this. I just feel like we never can get adjusted to doing things that way. There's never a time where we say, okay, we're just gonna handle it like this, and it just doesn't work out. And what it does is it forces us to do what's called the ad hoc interruption method, where you just say, okay, here's our default of what we're going to do, and then we're going to just say these are planned things and these are outages or interruptions, and we're just going to stripe them into our work. And you end up creating something called an interruption sandwich, which sounds awful because it kind of is, because then you're trying to position the interruptions in between the planned work. So, okay, I'm gonna finish this planned work thing first, then I'll jump in and handle that interruption. And once again, we get carried away with the interruption and don't finish the planned work, or we spend so much time doing the planned work that we don't have enough time to address the interruption. So while interlacing or interthreading sounds great, the interruption sandwich doesn't typically work either. Then there's my favorite, the dedicated sprint method. Ding, ding, ding. Sometimes you need to decide if it's something that's super urgent or critical, take care of it. If it's that absolutely necessary, kill your sprint to do it if you have to. But if not, set it aside and either make it A, the first item we're going to work on is in the next sprint as a story with a type of defect, or B, put it aside and say this will be handled during one of our technical debt sprints, and create a technical debt sprint that includes all the interruption based things that you're seeing, and do one a quarter. If one a quarter is not enough, set aside two a quarter, but allocate no more than the top 10 items you're going to do during that sprint and get them done during that sprint. That way the team is all focused on working on debt. It's not put on one individual. It's not a percentage of your time. It's what's expected for that sprint. And it helps everyone get on the same page and successfully complete what they said they were going to do. So it's brilliant, because then you have someone who's set aside in an interruption role, so to speak, that can monitor. Usually it's a scrum master, and make sure that things flow through. And then when you're and make sure that everything that the team's working on continues to flow through, and the interruptions don't break down the core team's ability to get work done. And then, of course, there's the Team John model, or what they call here the rotating responder role, where you have one person who's allocated to just take the interruptions, decide whether it's something that needs to be addressed right away, whether it's something that can be put off, whether it's something that we can mark as known but not resolved. And what this does, and we can go into Team John, but that would take far too long in just a simple podcast episode. But what this does is it allows you to have someone rotate off of the team for a sprint at a time, play this interruption role. And in turn, what ends up happening is it gets you on the right page to make sure that you can tackle the interruptions that need to be tackled, but place aside everything else so that you're not causing a core team to deviate. So great technique. And some tips. Make sure you improve your QA process so you're not just throwing things back and forth over the fence. Make sure that you have people who are testing as well as working on things at any given time. Make sure that your product owner is scheduling in maintenance, that you're not letting maintenance become an interruption. Keep a regular dialogue with teams and customers that are out in the field so that you have a heads up when things are coming in and what things customers really are struggling with versus things that customers are just actually requesting. And keep track of those verbal and contractual commitments. Create a system of record, if you will, that you have so that you know exactly what's coming in. Be a good communicator and reduce those escalations. Don't let people get angry about what they need. Let them know that you understand what they need and that it'll be addressed in the near future. Ensure that everything that you learn and knowledge is shared with other teams. Be aware of seagulling. Know that somebody's going to swim in and swoop in rather, and try to get you to do things right away and cause thrash, and know how to deal with the seagull when it happens. And make sure you take an opportunity to learn from each interruption. You want to make sure that as you get interrupted that you understand what type of interruption it was and whether it's an education that interruptions cause problems or whether it was a real interruption where you can teach people the correct path to get it escalated to the right level. Either way, you're going to end up better off than what you were before. So that's going to do it. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you have a topic you want to discuss, learn more at agiledad.com. We'd love to hear from you. As always, we encourage you to stay healthy, stay well, and stay agile, my friends. Until next time, do take care.